For more on Afghanistan, we're joined once again by Anthony Cordesman of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Cordesman recently returned from Afghanistan, where he worked on an advisory board to General Stanley McChrystal, commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Thank you for joining us again.
A pleasure.
In a report that you wrote about your trip, you say that the Taliban and al-Qaeda are winning in Afghanistan. How so?
They have been in a position where they lose when they actually encounter NATO and ISAF forces. But at the same time, they have steadily expanded the areas they occupy. They've expanded their political influence. They've expanded their control over the economy. In many parts of the country, they effectively run the justice system. They're the only real visible presence of government. And they moved from areas along the east and the south, up into the center, into the west, into valleys in the north. When you look at the map of Afghanistan in 2005 and 2009, the area under Taliban influence has increased by more than 9 times. And in recent years, it's virtually increased by 50 to 100% a year. They're winning the battle of political attrition. And in a counterinsurgency, that's what counts.
And yet you also write that the NATO forces can achieve victory in a broad sense. What would victory take?
Well, what it takes to start with is resources. I think people have no idea how little money, how few troops, how little effort went into developing Afghan forces for nearly the first 5 years after the Taliban were first driven out of Afghanistan. Basically, all the resources went into Iraq. Many of the Europeans treated this as post-conflict reconstruction. They didn't take the Taliban seriously. Even today, some can't use the word war. They have to use the word conflict for political reasons. If you put the resources in, that by itself will make a tremendous difference. If you take developing Afghan forces really seriously, and the plans are there, and the trainers have the capability, that makes a major difference. And if you can clean up the problems with the Karzai government and within the international aid effort, that would provide a very strong incentive to Afghans to reject the Taliban and support the government.
Well, I want to bring up, you mentioned in your report that one of the great challenges facing the U.S. and NATO is the Afghan government. Why is the government a challenge?
Part of the reason is it simply lacks capability. We created a system that was extremely centralized to try to make the warlords weaker. In fact, what we did was make Karzai and others so dependent on regional leaders that we actually strengthened the warlords. But in the process, there's no real provincial government. There's no real district government. You created a power vacuum, and it's one in which power brokers and corruption dominate, not the kind of government you need out in the field, out in the provinces, to provide an alternative to the Taliban.
Only about 15 seconds left. I just wondered, your first-hand observations of General McChrystal, what were they?
I think for the first time you have a leader working with an ambassador, Ambassador Eikenberry, who fully understands what's happening. And that American leadership can, if it's given the resources and the authority, change the course of this war.
Anthony Cordesman, thank you.
Thank you.